Hi, welcome to the Kawaii Stitch Riches Cauldron. I'm going to be showing you how to make a Snorlax plushie today. And it's going to be so cute, it's going to be a pillow, it's going to be big and fluffy. Anyways, let's get down to it. And let's get started. I have my little sketch of Snorlax here, gotta know what he looks like, and here I have approximately where the indentations are, so when you cut those triangles out, it'll make everything round. Now I have all of my fabric and my base, which is just a bunch of polyfill that you can get at any craft store. I'm actually gonna use a lot more scraps too because I don't have enough polyfill. Go figure. But right here I'm just making the general shape of the body of Snorlax by putting the polyfill in the center of this piece of fabric and just folding it up like so, using pins to keep it in place, and turning it until it's the general shape I want. I do have to be careful because I had to pick a top and a bottom to this thing. So once I had my top and bottom, I cut the top and the bottom in half to two sides on either side, and wanted to make sure that everything was the same on both sides. So if I have one big triangle like I'm putting down here, then I want another big triangle on the opposite side. So I think that is about where the arm was gonna be. So the other arm should be about the same. And that's about the general shape. It looks like a onigiri, I guess. It's a Japanese rice ball type of shape. Sort of like a really fat triangle. And I'm just following the polyfill, how it's sort of fat. I'm following the curve to make sure the entire thing is round. And to leave the bulkiness, and so I don't see like a big indentation of all of the fabric, I'm just gonna cut the excess off. And it's okay because I know that the excess is excess because I've already seen it inside out, or right side in. This is inside out. When I take out the pins, it's gonna look really weird. Doesn't look anything like a Snorlax, but that's what I got. And eventually, when it's all sewn together, it's gonna contain that shape of a Snorlax again. Oh, right. I folded it in half, so it'll be symmetrical on either side. See, I'm smart sometimes. Now it looks a lot more symmetrical. Looks like an alien. Looks like one of those aliens from really old video games. Yeah. And I just pinned it all together again, and I'm cutting off some more excess because this is going to be covered by a second piece of fabric to make the belly of Snorlax. And it's just going to make it easier for me so I know where to put that. So just inserting the polyfill again. And as you can see, it's a little bit loose, so I just need to stuff it with whatever scraps I have, and I have a lot of scraps, but I do see that it is still a little loose. Oh, it looks like I sewed it already. The next part I'm gonna explain the sewing. Here I sewed it a little bit. Never start at the very edge of the fabric, or else it's just gonna get sucked right into the bottom of the sewing machine. Start a little bit away from the edge. And it was a little fat, and I'm just trying to close it up a little bit because it was a little lumpy. And to get it smoother, I just flipped it inside out again, and I sewed it a little bit, well, a little bit more in, and I followed the curve of everything else a little bit better. And when the curve is really smooth, then, well, the curveness is really smooth. Alright. So just putting it back in. Yeah, it looks a lot better now. And as I said, I have a lot of scraps. I put the polyfill in first so that it's really smooth and fluffy, and then I stuff it with whatever to make it, well, stuffed. And it doesn't really matter what goes in the center as long as the outside is nice and soft, which is where the polyfill comes in. So that is the shell of all of the stuffing, and all the bad stuff is on the inside. You don't get to feel that part. And since I have it nicely filled, and it is still a little bit loose, I'm gonna glue some of this down to give it that final shape that I'm looking for. And here I have the stomach fabric, just gonna drape that over, and then sort of trace around it into the general shape of where I need it to be. Because draping is a lot easier than measuring and stuff. I mean, you can totally measure it, just measure the circumference, measure how the dome, how long that is, and put it all together, get the circle formulas that you need. But draping is a little bit easier. As you can see, I'm just sort of eyeballing it. And now that I have my general shape, I'm just gonna smooth it out because it's a little bit lumpy, folding it in half so it's symmetrical. And I'm just gonna cut along the edges, making the edge really smooth and not jagged as with my first attempt. Now it's all symmetrical. And now I just placed it back on. I'm gonna pin it down first on one side and then the opposite side, or at least the at least in some general points all around, about 4 pins to hold it in place at the beginning. And I tried to make the pins one side, the opposite side, and then quarter turn, same thing. Because if I put the pins on in a circle, like one after the other, like to the right just a little bit, then there's a chance that it'll shift enough and it will look like off-centered at the end, and nobody wants that. And right here, since it is a sphere and I'm using a flat piece of fabric, I need to actually there's gonna be a little bit of excess where the edges are, and I just sort of did the thing at the beginning where I folded it into a little triangle, and I'm just gluing that triangle down. So that relieves some of the excess, and it lays a lot flatter. It's sort of like a seam, except it's not a seam. And I just did that to the entire thing. Now it just looks like a pillow, but here's the head. The head is slightly smaller than the body. I just lined it up right here. It's a little bigger than what it appears it needs, because when I actually stuff it, it's gonna be a little bit smaller. And I did the same thing with the face, with this as the same thing as the body. And I'm just going to glue everything down. And I'm actually gonna sew on the head by hand, because I really don't trust glue to keep something that big in place. Actually, the feet fell off when I glued it down, so I'm gonna have to re-sew those. But right here, I'm just doubling a thread through the needle so that there's 2 even threads, 2 even thread lengths through one needle, even though it's one simple thread. I didn't explain that well. It's one thread doubled over. I'm just making a knot here and a double knot here, so it's anchored and I'm just gonna make a simple whip stitch around the entire neck. That'll keep it on, and it'll, well, Snorlax won't lose his head when he uses Snore. I'm just going in and out all around the base of the neck. And I did the pin thing on the neck too. I did one side first, like at the chin, and then the opposite side at the base of the neck behind the head, and then the sides so that everything is centered. I also stuffed the head with polyfill at the edges, surrounding some internal stuffing of a lot of my scraps. This is a really good method of using your scraps, even though I still have a lot more. And here we have the arms. I placed some little triangles inside so that it would look like claws, and when it's flipped inside out, it'll look like a hand with claws on it. And here we have the ear. Cut out 4 of those, so when you put it together, it'll make 2 ears, and this is with 4 arm pieces to make 2 arms. Because when I flip it inside out, I use 2 pieces for 1 arm, and I see the little claws. It's so cute. To make it easier, you can tack it down with some glue, although it's a little bit hard to sew it, but I just sort of carefully sewed it in place. I sandwiched it, and I sewed it together very slowly and deliberately, making sure that they didn't move. And right here, I'm just hot gluing it all down, closing that seam after I stuffed it. Really should have sewed it together, but I was lazy. I'm just holding it in place with the other arm so it doesn't fall off. Right here, I'm just stuffing the ears. And well, the ears are a small part. I didn't really care about them being so soft. I just wanted like the main, bigger parts to be soft. But right here, I am just carefully gluing the ears on. Well, making sure they're stuffed. Oh, they gotta be on in a correct manner. I wasn't sure like how far apart the ears were, so I'm just looking up a reference. And I don't want him to look like a rabbit. And it looks like they were a little bit too long. They need to be little short, fat, stubby ears. Oh, it also looks like I doubled the fabric on either side of the ear. So right here we have 4 pieces of fabric, and the ears are just really thick. Right here we have the foot, and one side of the foot is going to be a little bit bigger because that's the side that's going to curve, and it's going to have this smaller piece at the base, so it sort of looks like a dome, like half of a dome, if that makes any sense. It still looks pretty fat, but I mean, I sewed it all together and it looks pretty okay. And I have the little paw print on that. I just glued that on. And right here, I have part of a circle, maybe like a third of a circle, maybe a little less than a third of a circle. I'm just gonna roll that up, glue it together to make a cone. And this is gonna be Snorlax's little toenails. I'm just gonna make a bunch of those, glue them on. He's gonna have little tiny clawed toenails. And just placing them on, trying to see if they fit. If they're too big, I can cut them down. If they're too small, I can just make some bigger ones. And now that I have all the claws, I'm just gonna position them. Oh, right. To make them look more pointing in all of the directions, in all the same directions, I just sort of snipped a little bit off because the foot is curving. And to follow the curve, I put the curve into the toenail. Doing the same with the right toenail, making sure it fits, and gluing that sucker on. And just gluing the foot where it needs to be. Should have sewed it. If you're doing this at home, try sewing it. And the fun part, I get to draw his little face on. I've got his teeth all ready. They're just little felt squares, or felt triangles of white. And I'm just using a black marker. Ben likes to use these in his art a lot. But I like to use them in crafting. He probably doesn't like that. And I'm gluing the teeth on very carefully. And there you have it! He's fat! He's plushy! He's a pillow! He's huge! It's Snorlax! Aww. And here he is! He's so cute! He's got his little hands and stuff. Don't go down. I'm missing his legs. But here he is. He's so cute, he's happy, he's so fluffy, I can cuddle him. And I actually made this for my boyfriend Mo from the Mofo channel, aka Ben. He's so happy with it because he says he's a Snorlax too. But yes, if you make your own, tag us, tag me, the Kawaii Stitch Witch, tag Mofo or Waspnest videos so we can see it, and then we'll like it and stuff. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Bye.